Ladies and gentlemen, it has finally arrived. Lately, it's felt like this series has been missing for a long time, and sure, life does happen, but today, it returns with a similar name. Welcome to Footy Canucks Abroad, a new series on the channel that will be around on a full-time basis so you can be kept in the loop on how Canada's footballers are doing around the world, as well as top stories and news around these players, from their performances, rumors, injury updates, and much more. These will occur around on a weekly basis, but expect videos to be uploaded less than a week apart, and that all depends on match schedules and developing stories. So first, in this inaugural edition, we're going to take a look at some player performances around the UK, Spain, and Italy before we check in on some injury updates to start off the new year. And then we'll end it off with taking a look at some movements around the MLS with Canada men's national team players, as well as one big mover leaving the MLS. And then on the women's side of things, we have a big move in the NWSL. And then after that, we will wrap it up taking a quick glance at the Camp Poutine roster, which will take place in LA in the coming days, as well as a glance of what's to come ahead of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Anyways, here we go. To kick off going abroad, we'll begin with Serie A in Italy. Most recently, we saw the Canadians of Jonathan David and Ismail Kone go head-to-head at Juventus' 3-0 win over Sassuolo, which it was a fun match to watch, even though it was quite boring. Prior to that, however, there was a lot of anger and frustration within Juventus supporters. To open up the year, Jonathan David ended up starting at home against Lecce with Dusan Vlahovic out injured, but it ends up being a 1-1 draw as he decided to attempt a panika at the spot. And it did not go very well. It ends up costing a win ultimately. In that match, however, he was very effective in the box. He created one chance, and he had 2 additional shots on frame, but all of those were saved, and then 3 other shots that he had in the box were blocked. So overall, it's really not a bad match at all, but that PK, ends up overshadowing all the good work he did in the box. After that, we see Ismail Kone come off the bench about for half an hour, and that ends up being a 1-1 draw for Sassuolo going up against Parma. And he didn't do anything spectacular in that match, but he did notably have multiple defensive contributions. But now, we look at the match between Sassuolo and Juventus, and you wonder how this one's going to play out. We see David and Kone both go for 90 minutes. It was a match that we all knew that Juventus was better in, and things seemed calm. And then, next thing you know, Sassuolo, they have an own goal off the head. And, I would say things looked pretty much the same all match, but you zoom up to the hour mark, and we see Jonathan David feed Fabio Moretti a ball, and he puts it home to make it 2-0. And shortly after, the Sassuolo left back plays an ill-advised pass, and Jonathan David's press ends up taking that ball away, and he has a nice and composed finish heading to the box while out-dribbling the goalkeeper. And that match ends up ending 3-0, and he is the man of the match. And I would say David could have had another goal, but you could tell he was a little too confident, but he did have some big takeaways in this match, and he looked to be firing on all cylinders and was Juventus' best player in that match. Kone was also spectacular in the midfield. I would say that he was their best player, and he made 54 of his 56 passes, and he was 100% on dribbles on 3 attempts. So a very good last match for both of these guys ahead of March. So hopefully they continue this form. Next, we'll move on to the UK and take a look at the EFL Championship, the second tier in England. Liam Miller returned from a hamstring injury, and he went just about 90 minutes against Stoke City, which that ended up being a 1-0 loss. It wasn't his best match, but he did create 2 big chances on the left side with 2 successful crosses. And that's the difference right now between them being in the top 6 and out of the top 6, as they sit in 7th behind Watford on goal differential. And then we're going to take a look at Daniel Jeppesen at Liam Miller's previous club, P&E. Some of that form that we saw ahead of the new year has dipped. He's come off the bench in the last 2 contests, and he featured half an hour against Sheffield Wednesday in a 3-0 win. And he most recently played a better second match against Bristol City in a 2-0 win. and that actually puts them 4th in the table, so they currently hold a playoff spot right now. Also to note, Alfie Jones is currently out of the lineup due to an injury with Middlesbrough, so more to follow on that. And down in League One, Owen Goodman has been on the bench for Huddersfield Town. Up north in the Scottish Premiership, Junior Hoylett has been the only player to feature in Scotland, with defenders Alistair Johnson and Derek Cornelius currently out with injuries. Hoylett was recently deployed as an attacking midfielder, and his side ended up earning a 3-1 win against Kilmarnock, and he almost had their second goal of the match with a header early on, but it was saved. Other than that, it appeared he thrived in this role as he went 81% of his passing. He did have one key dribble, and this will be a veteran to look out for ahead of the World Cup. To conclude going abroad in Europe, we recently saw Daniel Lechey in Spain appear off the bench for Villarreal in a 3-1 win over Elche. He ended up featuring for just over 15 minutes, and it wasn't your spectacular performance off the bench, but it was a match where he was a positive impact on both sides of the ball, and he was on when they did get their go-ahead goal to make it 3-1. Tajon Buchanan ends up missing out on this match, but no worries everyone, that was just due to yellow card accumulation, so we should see him again over the weekend. Lastly, it is to note that Stefan Eustáquio has continued to struggle for minutes with Porto since the Club World Cup collapse, so this will be something to keep eyes on, as he did not feature most recently in Porto's win, and they currently sit on top of the table. So overall, not much has occurred since the new year, but we have seen some positives with some injuries, but also some negatives, unfortunately. But on the women's national team side of things, Kadesha Buchanan has returned to training with Chelsea, and she is a player that Canada has truly missed out back lately. And we'll continue to keep eyes on her progress, but I would expect her to return to the pitch ahead of March. And also, talking about center backs, Moise Bombita was also seen in a video working hard on his strength after having surgery for a leg fracture back in October. I still believe he has some ways to go, but the fact that he is walking on it and he's very positive is a very great thing. So those are the positives, but the negatives. Alfie Jones recently had surgery for what appears to be an ankle injury that has been lingering, and that ended up forcing him out ahead of the new year. And we'll see how Middlesbrough handles things without him, but it is something to look at as he is expected to miss time in March, but we're going to need more information on that to see if his international window is in jeopardy. And that would also be the same thing for Jacob Schaffelberg, who was included in the Camp Poutine roster, but he is getting surgery, which is recently announced by LAFC, which is the same injury that was lingering since the MLS Cup playoffs last year. So it appears to be the same situation for both of these players, and we'll see their updates as time progresses. Currently, as we look at the injury list, we've seen Alphonso Davies, Lucy Figueroa, Kyle Larin, and Leo Miller all return back to action. On the women's side of things, we've seen the return of forwards Dean Rose and Olivia Smith in England. So those are players who missed out on their last windows and are all good to go currently. And since those last respective international windows, we've seen some injuries pile up. For the men's national team, we've seen center back Derek Cornelius, and as mentioned, Alfie Jones earlier, get added to this list, and they are both in jeopardy of missing out in March. And that also includes Jacob Schaffelberg. And we really only have a timeline for Schaffelberg, as it has been reported he'll miss about 2 months, but still something to keep eyes on. With the women's national team, Selena Sidorsky is out after undergoing an ankle surgery after the international window, and there is no date on a set return. But I imagine the next international window for her is now in jeopardy. Other than that, you'll see the list of players injured on both sides, and we'll look to continue to update this as more news comes out. Now it's time to look at some completed transfers. There are still some rumors out there, especially for Nico Seeger, so I expect to see a move. But first, we are going to begin with the first move that happened back in December, and that was Jaden Nelson being traded to Austin FC from the Vancouver Whitecaps in exchange for a draft pick and 1.25 million GAM. It's an interesting move, and especially looking at it now. And this is a club that is solid, however. They were in the playoffs, and they had a very deep U.S. Open Cup run. And he'll have an opportunity to start, but he'll have to fill quite the shoes as he's essentially Osman Bakari's replacement, as he ends up going to Poland after not having an ideal time in the MLS and fell out of favor of Ghana's national team. Also, we saw another trade that sees Jacob Schaffelberg on the move from Nashville SC and heading to LAFC, who sends $1 million back in GAM. And this one is a very interesting move because you have the likes of Sane on the left, so looks like we'll see Schaffelberg play more on the right. But now he has that injury, so now there's more questions upon his return. I am a little skeptical about this, like I was with Jaden Nelson, but we'll have to see how he fits. But he does have the potential to play with Sane and Bonga and to open up the new year. We ended up seeing MLS Goalkeeper of the Year Dane St. Clair make the move to the MLS Cup champions Inter Miami. And it is reported he took less money than what Minnesota United was offering. And this is quite the massive move for him, as he'll be the starter and he'll have an opportunity to win some hardware with the CONCACAF Champions Cup on the horizon, as this club is looking to bolster their positions as we speak. And oddly enough, Maxime Crepeau ends up making a move to Orlando City. So we're going to see two Canadian goalkeepers going head-to-head in the Florida Derby, so that will spice things up for sure as they fight for the starting job in this year's 2026 FIFA World Cup. Crepeau has a lot of more pressure on him, replacing Pedro Garcés, who was supposed to be Carlos Cornelio, but he ended up having a little sneaky link thing going on. But anyways, I'm not going to speak more on that, but both of these are multi-year deals essentially. And our last move and our biggest move is Ali Ahmed departing the Vancouver Whitecaps and heading to Norwich City of the EFL Championship. And this is a club that is looking to get out of the relegation zone right now, which they're only in it by a point. And they do expect Ahmed to be a big-time player out wide on the left. So personally, I do think this is a solid move. And sure, they're not in a good spot currently, but it is hard for me to see this club being relegated. And I'd argue this is the most competitive league in the world when it comes down to competition. They just need to put the wins together, and I think Ahmed will help this club hold on to the ball a little bit more, and we'll see that negative goal differential rise up, but they are the worst defensive side in the league currently, so it's something we're going to need to keep tabs on. On the women's side of things, we do have one big mover. It's another goalkeeper, and this one is a big one. And Kaylin Sheridan, after 4 seasons, departs the San Diego Wave, and she'll be taking her talents to Raleigh to play for the NC Courage. And to me, it's an interesting move for sure, but there was a starting job wide open there, so I think she's looking for more of a reset, as we didn't see the best 2025 from her, honestly, and she'll be locked in into the 2028 season with them. Now, we'll take a quick glance at the Camp Poutine roster, which 2026 will start off with, and this is a camp for a lot of new and inexperienced internationals, but also a revenge tour, as they'll take on Guatemala in LA at BMO Stadium on January 17th, which is a rematch to the 2025 CONCACAF Gold Cup quarterfinals. This roster includes 21 players, including a training camp player. Notably, we see 2 players that represented Canada in the Under-17 World Cup in Qatar recently, as well as 2 uncapped goalkeepers. This also includes a total of 8 first-time call-ups and 9 if you want to include Marcelo Flores, since he's not a training camp player, unlike last time. And we do have around 10 uncapped players in general. We also see 3 call-ups from the Canadian Premier League, and also 1 from the Swedish's top league due to them being on a break. But most players were not available due to their European schedules, and this is also an unofficial window, but this match will count towards the rankings. And it is expected that Jonathan Osorio will be the captain for this upcoming window. I expect more information when I release my men's national team preview video. Notably, the top 2 Canadian goalkeepers, as mentioned earlier, missed out, and that's due to their moves to Florida, respectively, as they work on getting settled in, so I hope that explains that. Lastly, before we end this first edition video of Footy Canucks Abroad, we have recently had a confirmation of a few friendlies upcoming for the Canada women's national team ahead of 2026. This year, they will participate in the USA's ShesBelieves Cup. It will return back to its original format with 3 matches allowed in the upcoming March window. Alongside the USA, the other two nations in this tournament are Common Bulls, Argentina and Colombia. This tournament will open up on March 1st as Canada will take on Colombia in a rematch of the 2024 Olympics in Nashville, Tennessee, Geodis Park. So that will be an interesting way to open it up. And following that, the tournament will shift to Columbus, Ohio at the newly renamed Scotts Miracle-Gro Field, where they will be hosted by the USA on March 4th. And to conclude the tournament, Canada will go up against Argentina at Sports Illustrated Stadium in Harrison, New Jersey, outside of New York City. And the good news for the national team is they'll have quality opponents with a better rounded Colombia as well as Argentina. I also believe I meant to include that date, which is March 7th to conclude the tournament, so sorry there. But anyways, to the bad news, they lost to Argentina and the USA last year, and Colombia is, seeking some revenge from 2024. So we'll see what happens, because lots of things do need to change, but it is a positive sign to see Canada involved in this tournament and not playing an Imperator Cup like they did last year. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this first edition of Footy Canucks Abroad. Starting on Friday, not too sure when this video will get out, but just noting that, we will have the FA Cup in full swing as it is the third round. So we do have some exciting tournament football to review in the midweek, either on Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm not too sure if we're going to see Ali Abdi make his debut, especially in a tournament football match right off the bat, even though it is against fourth tier side Walsall. But they are currently a favorite to promote to League One. I also want to congratulate all Voyager members who ended up winning the rights to tickets for the 2026 FIFA World Cup to see Canada play. I look forward to seeing all of you who will be in Toronto for the opener, and that is in June. It's really going to be an exciting time and a great summer, once-in-a-lifetime experience. Other than that, I feel this was, plenty to cover in the inaugural edition of this, but I just want to make sure everyone's in a loop, and we'll go more in depth into rumors and 2026 transfers next time out. Thanks for watching, y'all, and hit that subscribe button so we can get this channel to 100 subscribers, and I'll see you in the next edition of Footy Canucks Abroad.